It's the Monday Mirror edition of Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. That's Wade Neely. I'm Maurice Patton. We're coming to you from our homes, and we will be here for the next couple of hours talking local, regional, and national sports. Looking forward to it. Wade, how's your Monday so far?
Hey, not bad, Bo. Good to be back with you after a little elongated absence, but we're back, and I'm proud to report, it's kind of nice outside, and it's going to be nicer as the week rolls along, which is always a good thing, right?
Anytime it's nice outside this time of year, it's a good thing. And like you said, it's going to get better as the week progresses, it appears, which is good because we've got some outside sports cranking up. We've got spring sports practicing. We've got girls flag football getting started this week. And to help us observe that, I guess, we've got Emily CROWELL from the TSSAA with us here in the second hour talking about girls flag. Williamson County and other areas across Middle Tennessee and across the state will be getting on the gridiron here pretty soon. So we're going to talk to Emily about that. In the next segment, we'll be joined by Jerry Palm of CBS Sports talking a little indoor sports, specifically men's basketball. He is the bracketologist for CBS Sports. We'll be talking a little college basketball. And it seems pretty quiet on the bracket front. It feels like folks have kind of settled into some roles here, surprisingly. As active and as up and down as some things were a couple of weeks ago, it feels like folks are kind of falling into place now. It might just kind of be the calm before the storm because we got conference tournaments looming here in 2-3 weeks, and that could change some things. But we'll check in with Jerry here in the next segment and see how that goes. We'll also be talking a little golf, little more college basketball, some football. Plenty going on this time of year. This is one of the favorite times of the year if you are a fan of sports in general, just because there is so much going on. Spring training and baseball. NASCAR is cranked up. They ran down in Atlanta this past weekend. We'll talk a little bit about that. All sorts of hoops. The combine is going on in Indy. So plenty to get to, and we're going to get to a pretty good bit of it here over the next couple of hours.
Yeah, like you said, a lot to go into. Bracketologies when, this is kind of peak season for Jerry Palm and all of that crew as we start to decipher things, who's in, who's out, who's moving up, who's moving down, who doesn't have a snowball's chance, who maybe has a great chance. It's all part of that madness as we get rolling straight into bracketology. But right, it was a busy weekend and a big week on tap here, both locally, regionally, and nationally.
No doubt. So, let's go ahead and roll into it. Let's get it started like we always do about this time with this weekend's results and today's schedule on the rundown.
This is the rundown.
Lock and load, boys and girls. The Monday Rundown is here. But before we get into the rundown, I want to remind you that it's brought to you every Monday by our friends at Zion Christian Academy. ZCA offers a faith-based, Christ-centered education right here in Murray County. So give them a call today at 931-388-5831 or visit online at zioneagles.org and schedule an appointment today. That's Zion Christian Academy, prepared for college, equipped for purpose.
Let's start with some girls basketball scores from Friday night. These are all postseason games, obviously. East Nashville with a 78-2 win over KIPP Nashville. 78-2, yes. Do not adjust your sets. Christ Presbyterian Academy defeated Father Ryan 51-37. Webb School with a 41-36 win over Goodpasture. It was Lipscomb Academy 53, Harpeth Hall 44. Wilson Central edging Laverne 43-42. Tullahoma with a 40-28 win over Lawrence County. It was Franklin County 54, Murfreesboro Central 44. Providence Christian with a 51-33 win over Franklin Road Academy. Richland with a 66-19 win over Culleoka. It was Cornersville 46, Santa Fe 43. Stewart's Creek defeated Smyrna 61-36. Liberty Creek defeated Trousdale County 59-32. It was Westmoreland 51, White House Heritage 25, and Whites Creek with a 55-41 win over Stratford.
Boys basketball action from Friday night. Nolensville picks up a 52-47 win versus Brentwood. Centennial on top of Summit 49-40. Eagleville 84, Huntland 22. Kip Nashville falls to East Nashville 67-53. BGA on top of Good Pasture 72-67. Independence 52, Page 44. Loretto with a nice win 56-33 versus Lewis County. Giles County wins virtually at the buzzer on a three-pointer from Damari Holt 64-62 versus Marshall County. John Overton with a 69-35 win versus McGavock. Mount Pleasant 63, Summertown 57. It was Providence Christian 57, Webb School 55. Franklin 67, Ravenwood 36. Lebanon 72, Smyrna 61. Stewart's Creek with a 57-48 win versus Wilson Central. Tullahoma 10 points better than Lawrence County, 52 for Lawrence County, 62 for Tullahoma. Whites Creek with a 55-41 win versus Stratford. That caps your high school action from Friday night. NBA action, the Grizzlies had to rally, but they did on the road, picking up a 105-104 win versus the Orlando Magic.
Saturday girls basketball action. It was Cane Ridge 10 points better than Antioch, 46-36. Green Hill with a 46-37 win over Beach. Blackman down Riverdale 57-16. Brentwood got past Franklin 61-48. It was Lipscomb Academy 54, Christ Presbyterian 47. Cookville 56, Stewart's Creek 37. Good Pasture defeated Franklin Road Academy 65-58. Eagleville with a 49-38 win over Huntland. Hillsboro defeated Overton 65-50. Kenwood 52, West Creek 34. It was Maplewood 46-43 over Lawson. Lebanon defeating Wilson Central 76-31. Lewis County edges Battle Creek 54-51. Summertown upsets Loretto 39-31. Macon County with a 63-30 win over White House. It was Mount Juliet 52, Hendersonville 43, Page 49, Nolensville 43. Webb School with a 49-41 win over Providence Christian. Rockvale defeated Oakland 55-45. Smith County 47, Watertown 35. Springfield doubles up Clarksville Northeast 67-33. Stratford with that 2-0 win over Kip Nashville. That sounds like a forfeit. And Valor Collegiate 71, Hume Fogg 41.
Other scores, let's go to the boys' side for Saturday, where Antioch defeats Cane Ridge 71-55. Franklin on top of Centennial 48-44. Cookville takes care of Stewart's Creek 53-41. It was Harpeth 53, East Hickman 39. Gallatin 54, Green Hill 50. Good Pasture on top of Webb School 72-58. It was Hendersonville 61, Beach 57. Hickman County 30 points better than Cheatham County 63-33. Houston County 65, McKenzie 51. Hume Fogg was a winner 63-46 versus Maplewood. Independence 52, Nolensville 40. Other scores, Joe Burns 65, Merrill Hyde 62, Hillsboro 63, John Overton 26. MLK on top of Lawson 54-46. It was Lebanon 51, Laverne 48. Westmoreland was a 43-41 winner versus Liberty Creek. Station Camp 50, Macon County 36. Blackman edging rival Oakland 53-42. It was Providence Christian 64, BGA 54. Richland was a big winner 69-31 versus Cornersville. Rockvale 66, Siegel 59. Rossview 91, Clarksville Northeast 47, Santa Fe slipping by Culleoka, 18-point advantage for the Wildcats, 58-40. It was Sycamore 41, Montgomery Central 39. Coming down the stretch, Jackson County with a 75-21 win versus Watertown, White House 59, Portland 54. White House Heritage takes care of Trousdale County 80-35. And final score in boys basketball Saturday night, it was East Nashville 57, Whites Creek 53.
Women's basketball action from Saturday. Middle Tennessee State with a 59-46 win over Sam Houston State. Lipscomb edges Austin Peay 66-64. Tennessee Tech with an 84-71 win over Tennessee State. Delta State 53, Trevecca 45, Lindsey Wilson 70, Cumberland 63, and UT Southern with a 83-66 win over Blue Mountain. In men's action on Saturday, Tennessee goes on the road, picks up a 77-69 win at Texas A&M. Tennessee Tech defeats Tennessee Tech defeats Tennessee State 77-74. There we go. Middle Tennessee State 74, Sam Houston 70. Vanderbilt with a big win at home against Ole Miss, 77-72. Belmont edges Indiana State, 77-75. It was Trevecca, 76, Delta State, 69. Lindsey Wilson defeats Cumberland, 94-74, and UT Southern, 82. Blue Mountain, 72. On the pitch, the Nashville Soccer Club and the New England Revolution played to a scoreless draw. On the ice, it was the Preds coming back from that Four Nations layoff and picking up a 2-1 win over the Avalanche.
Other action from the weekend. Let's go to Sunday. Let's go to college basketball. Women's action. It was Tennessee 86, Florida 78. South Carolina takes care of Vanderbilt 82-54. Murray State on top of Belmont 83-78. Athletes Unlimited from Saturday. Team Caldwell defeating Team Harrison 82-79. Close game there. And it was Team Segrist 84. Team Sims 76. Sunday action, not quite as nice to the Preds. They fall to the Devils. 5-0 was your score. Sunday also not kind to the Memphis Grizzlies, who fall to the Cavaliers 129-123.
Girls basketball action today. 4 o'clock start for Overton and Antioch. At 6, you've got Beach and Hendersonville. Hollow Rock, Brewston, and Houston County square off at 6. Also at 6, it's Hume Fogg at Lawson. Lawrence County taking on Murfreesboro Central. Franklin takes on Nolansville out at Page. Rossview is at Springfield. Stewart's Creek plays Wilson Central. At 6:30, Kenwood takes on Dixon County. 7 o'clock start for Hillsborough and Cane Ridge. At 7:30, Kirkwood takes on Clarksville. Green Hill is at Mount Juliet. Brentwood faces host Page. Maplewood faces Valor Collegiate. And at 8 o'clock, Clarksville Northwest is at Henry County.
Other games tonight on the boys' side, one beginning at 5:30 as John Overton takes on Cane Ridge. At 6 p.m., you can see Summertown taking on Lewis County. Also at 6 will be Oakland versus Siegel. One game at 6:30 tonight. That's West Creek versus Dixon County. At 7:30, it'll be Cheatham County versus East Hickman. Other 7:30 games include Eagleville versus Moore County. Loretto will be at Mount Pleasant. It'll be Blackman versus Rockvale. 8 o'clock tip-offs tonight as Kenwood at Henry County, MLK versus Hume Fogg. And at 8:30 this evening, Antioch versus Hillsborough. Men's college basketball tonight. Couple of local squads going to duke it out. It'll be Austin P playing host to Lipscomb. That game gets underway at 6 p.m., and you can see that game on ESPNU. That brings us to the end of the Monday rundown. And ladies and gentlemen, let's kick off the rest of the show.
Your top story, as always, comes to you courtesy of Piggly Wiggly in Neely's Mill in Columbia. Be sure and check out their delicious daily deli lunch options available from 11 a.m. until 6 p.m. Also, their hand-cut meats and everything is cost plus 10% at the cash register. Piggly Wiggly, Neely's Mill, Columbia, bringing you our top story. Blades Brown made the cut down in Mexico, which meant that he got to spend a little longer brushing up on his Spanish that he took 4 years of at Brentwood Academy. That was the maybe second biggest development of the weekend for Blades after making the cut. He finished tied for 34th in that field with a 9-under performance for the 4 rounds. So Blades Brown cashed his first check as a professional golfer this weekend. Congratulations to him.
Yeah, good job by Blades. Had fun kind of keeping tabs on him Thursday through Sunday. And yes, through Sunday, because he kind of did what he needed to do to make the cut. You know, it was not a loaded field by any means. But, hey, for a guy that's starting out, he had played well in January in his debut and then followed up with a nice little run here, flirting with the top 20. You know, he had a couple shots down the stretch that maybe could have saw him climb up into that top 20 threshold. But really, really nice. Had a nice finish in his Friday round to kind of sneak him into contention for the rest of the weekend. Had about a 9-footer for par on number 17 Friday that luckily dropped to kind of get him in contention. And then, you know, just kind of going through the motions. We talked to him a couple weeks ago, and he said it was going to be fun. And he spoke to reporters after the event, said it was nice to tap into his high school Spanish a little bit and kind of, you know, show off his linguistics a little south of the border there. So all in all, a good start for Blades Brown. He had a great performance in January and now an even better showing south of the border here.
Absolutely. Starts out 68, 69, finished with a 71 yesterday. So maybe kind of coasted home, relatively speaking, but he finished in the money, and that's a good thing at this point. So congrats to him again, making the cut, getting in 4 rounds. At the age of 17, out there on the professional tour, he's kind of fighting uphill, but every time he can make a field for 4 days, it's going to be a big deal, I think. So obviously we'll be keeping an eye on that and keeping an eye on him, and solid weekend for him, like you said. So
yeah, a little over $35,000. Stash that away. Maybe start eyeballing what the next tournament is going to be, and start chipping some results. I mean, from not making the cut to making the cut, I mean, he's on a pretty good trajectory. I'm not saying he's going to win his next event, but he's on a pretty good trajectory through two thus far.
Well, like you said, he kind of flirted with the top 20 there for a while and then kind of fell off the last couple of rounds. But I think that's the next goal, I would imagine, would be to get a top 20 finish and then just try to kind of climb that ladder a little bit. And as is the case in so many sports and in so many instances, it's not going to be linear for him. But, seeing those little improvements, meeting those little goals and that kind of thing, you got to kind of pique his confidence a little bit there. So, it's a story that you just kind of root for. Him having the courage to kind of bet on himself in this situation instead of playing it safe and going the collegiate route. He's like, I'm gonna go out here and give it a shot and see what happens. So obviously wish him the best, and we'll see if we can get him on again here pretty soon. So Blades Brown ties for 34th down at Mexico. Again, $35K for the weekend. That ain't bad.
Not bad, not bad. And, it was neat listening to him talk to reporters after too. Said, on Friday when he's battling, trying to make the cut, making the cut, obviously, I think means, the paycheck is nice, but his goals are kind of long-term, right? So just making the cut and kind of extending his weekend and getting on that upward trajectory is the deal. But he said he was trying to turn it into little mini matches. He wasn't trying to go out and just shoot a number. He was trying to say, okay, let's shoot 2 under par on these last 2 holes. Kind of watching the cut line, kind of seeing what was going on, and knew it was going to be 3 or 4. So he was happy to kind of get in with his score there. But he said he kind of kept it in control and kind of said, okay, let's just shoot 2 under par on these last 2 holes. And I mentioned making that big par, about a 9-footer on number 17, is one that probably swung him in that direction. So, props all around. Good job for the youngster.
Absolutely. Let's take a break here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. When we come back to the Monday Mirror, we'll be joined by Jerry Palm of CBS Sports, talking a little NCAA men's basketball bracketology. Stick around. Whether you're an athlete or a weekend warrior, when it comes to your performance, don't settle for anything less than excellence. We're proud to announce that Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic is now Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, where we are redefining sports medicine and orthopedics. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance's team of expert sports medicine physicians understands the unique demands of your body. TOA Columbia specializes in personalized orthopedic care, offering state-of-the-art treatments for everything from sports injuries to joint replacements. Learn more at toacolumbia.com.
Step into the Lionel retail store at Opry Mills, Nashville, and you'll be captivated by all the magic of the 123-year history of Lionel trains. Whether you're already a train enthusiast or just getting started, Lionel will energize your love for trains. NASCAR fan? Come check out your local Lionel station to learn all there is to know about model trains and die-cast NASCAR collectibles. Visit nashville.lionel.com or call 615-455-9399.
Custom Stone Handler supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with River Stone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe that the measure of any person or company is how they treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStonehandlers.com.
You're seeing the signs too, right?
What signs?
So Busy Bee is a very close-knit family. We fight just like every family does. We have arguments, but we always come out with a solution to the problems. We don't just fight about what we want, we fight about what customers need. We want to make sure that every customer we go to is more than satisfied. And that doesn't just start whenever we show up at their door, that starts when we show up every day at work. We want to make sure that we are serving our customers to the best of our ability.
Welcome back to the Monday Mirror edition of Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. I'm Maurice Patton. That's Wade Neely, and we're pleased to be joined now by CBSSports.com's bracketologist, Jerry Palm, talking little bracketology. Jerry, happy Monday.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
What's up, Jerry?
Better than last Monday when we were scheduled to have you, Jerry. Thank you. Appreciate you coming. Yeah, appreciate you coming back with us after that little delay there. Jerry, Wade and I were talking off air and then earlier in the show. It feels like maybe the top two seed lines have kind of settled in to some degree here over the last couple of weeks. Is that accurate? It feels kind of quiet at the very top.
Yeah, it has been, but that doesn't mean it will stay that way.
Mm-hmm.
The only teams I feel like you can completely count on are Auburn and Duke. Auburn because they've just been so dominant, and Duke because they don't really have any challengers in the ACC. And as they showed on Saturday, maybe not too many other places either. So, I think those two are pretty solid. I think you could still see some movement among the other teams. But just this week's bracket, so from Friday to Monday, I had the top 6 teams in my bracket all won, and then only 3 of the next 14 won. So that's all the way through the 5 seeds, 11 losses from the number 7 overall to the number 20 overall. And that kind of thing can happen, and that's pretty chaotic. And there's nothing that's shielding the top 6 from being part of it.
You've got a comment, though. When everyone loses, nobody loses. So, I mean, how much of a shakeup did that create for you up at maybe on the top 4 seed lines?
Yeah, well, in a part, it depends on who you lost to over the weekend. But Michigan State got a win at Michigan on Friday. They ended up moving up 2 seed lines. And then there was probably half the teams moved one way or the other, 1 seed. So it wasn't, if you're the only team that loses in a group, that all won, the movement could be more dramatic. But when everybody's doing the same thing, you're either all winning or you're all losing, you don't see as many dramatic moves. And
kind of among those, and kind of, I guess, Jerry, among those teams and those particular losses, anybody that really kind of had a yucky loss that maybe we could carry a little extra weight, or are they all relatively the same considering everybody did? There were quite a bit of losses this weekend.
I mean, some were better than others, but none were so bad that somebody dropped 2 seed lines because of it. I mean, if you ask Purdue fans, blowing a 13-point halftime lead to Indiana is a bad.
I didn't want to bring things up, Jerry, but
that's all right.
You went there.
They went. What did they do? They did it. Indiana started the second half with a 28-3 run. That's not exactly good defense or offense. So the right team won, but Purdue isn't. I've even kind of mentioned it in my column today. It's like Purdue has lost 4 in a row, but they're losing to good teams, and so they're not really being hurt as much as a 4-game losing streak might hurt someone else.
Gotcha. Jerry Palm of CBS Sports here with us talking a little bracketology. Obviously, a lot of interest / concern with Tennessee right now, but it feels like the Vols are kind of evening things out a little bit. And again, it feels like they have just kind of settled into that number 2 seed, which isn't a bad place to be. They were ranked number 1 there for a while. They've had some outings where offense didn't come very easily for them, wasn't very pretty, but they've eked out a couple of wins here of late, and again, they've just kind of fallen into that number 2 seed. You've got them number 2 in the East, where Duke is the number 1, and I feel like most folks would take that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know that I want Duke in my region, but that's. But you can't really be in a region with the other SEC teams unless something, like balancing the bracket causes it to change. But I actually had a bracket like that where Tennessee was in the same region as one of the number ones because I had to do something to balance the bracket. But yeah, but I don't know that Tennessee is settled. I mean, there's a lot of basketball left to play. They still get, I think, Alabama at home. There's the SEC tournament where everyone takes a loss except the team that wins. So, how far do you go? Who do you beat before you get beat? And, or, in Tennessee's case, if they don't get beat, if they're the SEC tournament champion, they'll be a 1. So, there's still opportunities for Tennessee to move up. They're number 5 overall. So they're not that far. It might just be somebody beats Florida and all of a sudden there's room for Tennessee up there.
Jerry, I'm kind of curious your thoughts. There may not be a way to really answer this, but among the SEC teams, which team seeding, I guess, is on the shakiest ground currently, or who's the most volatile in terms of could go up, could go down in your mind in the SEC?
Well, probably the Mississippi schools because they're kind of close to the middle of the bracket where the teams are more alike. So one result can have a bigger impact. But I've also been looking at the bottom of the bracket where Texas, Arkansas, Georgia, every bracket I do, those 3 teams kind of switch around a little. I've had 2 of them among the first 4 in and 1 among the first 4 out, but it's not the same team every bracket. So, this week Georgia's the team that's out. Texas and Arkansas are in. Texas. Oh no, actually Texas might be out. I think they might.
Texas is out. You got Texas and Georgia both out, and Arkansas in right now.
Yep. So finally got it switched to 1 and 2 because Texas took a bad loss. Georgia's loss not so bad, but it's those 3 teams just kind of flitter in and around the cut line. Oklahoma and Vanderbilt have been spending time in the neighborhood of the cut line, but not so close to it that you worry about them going out yet. Although I still consider both of them to be bubble teams, in part just because of the league they're in, the schedules they have left, and the chance to take a high enough number of losses to push yourself out.
Stepping away from the SEC, because that's pretty much where Wade does a better job of this than I do, probably, of looking at things on a more national level because of his Wolverines primarily. But, I mean, is there anybody else out there that, might give an SEC team some consternation at some point, just in terms of in and out? Is there somebody that they need to be concerned with, maybe?
You mean in and out at the bottom of the bracket?
Yeah.
Well, Indiana just pushed their way in after the win over Purdue, so they're back in the bracket. I wouldn't rule out North Carolina as much as their resume looks like it's not going to make it. You never know. They beat Duke, all of a sudden they've got new life. There are all kinds of teams. Nebraska's in that neighborhood. There are 5 SEC teams down there. They're all fighting with each other. There's a lot of competition down there at the bottom of the bracket. The bubble is still pretty large, which is, kind of unusual for this time of year. But you've got Wake Forest down there. You've got West Virginia down there. Boise State's on the bubble. Gonzaga's on the bubble. They're a weird team. Cincinnati's on the bubble, but they're going to need to really come on strong if they're going to make it. Xavier's on the bubble. So, yeah, there's a lot of teams down there that, can really cause some problems for, themselves or someone else.
Right. Yeah, and you mentioned, Jerry, while we're going national, let's go really national. How concerned should Gonzaga be for a team that has never missed the tournament under Mark Few after they suffer getting swept by St. Mary's, including a tough one at home Saturday night?
Yeah, I wrote about them in Bubble Watch today, so you can read the full details there. But the short version is Gonzaga is a team. There are 2 sets of metrics on the team sheets. There's predictive ones that are heavily influenced by scoring margin, and there's resume quality ones which are not influenced at all. And Gonzaga is 11th on average in the metrics that are predictive, and they're in the mid 40s in the other one. And I don't remember ever seeing a team that was in contention for a spot in the bracket that was so disparate with these two groups of metrics. And their resume looks a lot more like the one in the 40s. Their best wins are Baylor, which is a 9 seed, San Diego State, a 10, Indiana, one of the last four teams in the bracket. And they've got a bunch of losses, most of which are to other, tournament teams. But they also have losses to Oregon State and Santa Clara that are not tournament teams, or not going to be tournament teams. And so just the lack of quality wins, and not just lacking in number, but really lacking in quality. They don't have a win over anybody in the top half of the bracket. That's not the kind of a resume that merits any kind of a ranking in the teens, but certainly a ranking in the 40s or something close to it makes a lot more sense. I actually had them as a 10 in today's bracket, which is 37 to 40 overall. But then I had to switch it up with BYU and put BYU down to find a place so that BYU could play or avoid playing on Sunday.
That's the nuance to putting the bracket together, I guess, Jerry, too, because obviously if BYU is in, that's something that the committee has to consider, that they can't play on certain days. And it's
really just Sunday. But yeah, it's just one more wrench in what's going to be a difficult bracket to manage anyway, because you're going to have three conferences put so many teams in the field. And so you're trying to keep those teams separated. You're trying to avoid rematches. You got all this stuff, all these rules you got to follow. And then you got to worry about BYU only being able to play in half the regions.
Talk about Indiana for a second, Jerry. I don't mean to continue your pain from that ball game, but I mean, they really seem like a weird situation. I mean, Mike Woodson is not coming back. They've basically got a lame duck coaching situation, and obviously they've not performed on a consistent basis. That's how they got there. But right now they're looking like a team that's in the field.
Well, they're one of the last four in. So, Indiana can't just rest on their laurels. They've got to go out and continue to win. They're 4-11 in quad one games. They have no losses outside of that group, but that's still not a very good mark. But they've got, Michigan State on the road. They got Purdue at home. I mean, that's one of those four, though, is Penn State. That's not a tournament team. So that's, not all quad one wins are the same, right? There's a big difference between winning at Michigan State and winning at Penn State. But they're both quad one wins. They have home Penn State left. They've got to go to Washington and Oregon. And Oregon's a tournament team, and they get Ohio State at home. So they only have one game left where they can help themselves, and three left that they can hurt themselves. And that's the thing about Indiana, is that they're just not consistent in their effort and intensity. And so you never know what you're going to get from game to game. Now, they're going to show up for Purdue, which, they did in both games. But, you just don't know. Will they show up for Penn State? Maybe. Will they show up for Oregon? Might not matter. It's really just so hard to predict what Indiana is going to do, because they've been so hit and miss just in terms of, the intensity they bring to a game. And that you just can't take. You got to bring it every night. It's the Big Ten. You got to bring it every night. I don't care how good that particular team is in the Big Ten. If you show up and you're only going 75%, you're going home with a loss.
Jerry, you mentioned you mentioned Ole Miss earlier, and my question is, was Vanderbilt's win over Ole Miss perhaps better for Vanderbilt, or in your mind maybe more damaging for Ole Miss for their chances going forward?
It was definitely better for Vanderbilt, because Vanderbilt was starting to trend down toward the cut line a little bit. So, that gives them a cushion. Now it's a little more of a cushion toward, safety in the field. Now they're not safe yet, but they're 3-8 in quad one games. Their only loss outside of that is to Drake, the leader in the Missouri Valley. So that's not really that bad a loss. All of their best wins have come at home. Tennessee, Kentucky, Ole Miss, all at home. Texas too. So if they really want to start to secure something, they need to beat someone of quality off their home floor. A&M is next. Georgia's at the end. Conference tournaments off their home floor, even if it's in their hometown. So, there's going to be opportunities for them. But if all of their best wins are still home games at the end, Selection Sunday could be kind of nervous for them.
Would that win potentially, hypothetically, versus Texas A&M on the road, would that be almost enough to pretty much put Commodore fans at ease in your mind?
Well, much more at ease anyway.
Okay.
I mean, that would be still a big hole in their resume. That's a great team, Texas A&M. So it's the best win they can probably get left, before the conference tournament for sure. So, yeah, I mean, that would be huge for them, but they can't just lose the other 3 games and think they're done.
Right. Okay.
Jerry, for where Vanderbilt came from at the beginning of this season with a new coach and with a revamped roster, basically, have they benefited the most from being a member of the Southeastern Conference of any SEC team?
That's a good question. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that aspect in particular. Their strength of schedule has certainly benefited from being in the SEC, but that's true of everybody. So, Vanderbilt is losing a bunch of games, but they're not taking bad losses. But in the end, maybe in a different league with maybe a less challenging schedule where you can stack more wins, maybe being in the ACC would have been better for them this year. And maybe, in a different year when their roster's built up a little more, they might be more competitive week in and week out in the SEC. So I don't know how much they've actually benefited from it because they're taking a lot of losses, but they aren't taking any bad losses. So at least that's good.
We talked about the Missouri-Alabama game midweek and how big a win that was for Missouri, obviously, even though a number of analysts kind of picked that win for the Tigers. For them to turn around and lose to Arkansas, is that just, again, the volatility of the SEC, or is that an indication of, maybe something to be concerned with Missouri?
Oh, I don't know. They've been pretty consistent. Obviously, Arkansas really needed that game and may have brought a little extra juice to it. Arkansas is in desperation mode and Missouri is not. And even if you're playing hard, there's a difference between being desperate and just playing hard. So I just think that, Arkansas needed it more and went out and got it. I don't know that it's any indictment of Mizzou. And obviously just needing the game and, doesn't mean you're always going to get it. And certainly Mizzou was good enough to win, but Arkansas is in desperation mode and they were able to get one.
Jerry, real quick, I wanted to ask too, other end of the state, but Memphis kind of sits in an interesting spot after had an overtime loss to Wichita State. Just one game up in the regular season. Does Memphis need to do a little bit more solidifying in your mind, or is the primary goal just still kind of staying the course in American play in your mind?
Yeah, that's another team with a really disparate gulf between the resume metrics and the metrics that are margin of victory influence. And Memphis does a lot better in the resume metrics where they're in the teens versus in the 40s of the net and KenPom and those metrics. And that's because they don't win by enough. They win a lot, but they don't win by enough. That's really shouldn't matter, right? And the committee says that doesn't matter. It's results oriented. Well, we'll see what they do with Memphis because Memphis has a lot of good wins. They've got 2 bad losses. Wichita State's not that great, but the other 2 are quad 3. I think Memphis, first of all, Memphis has to stop losing to teams that it shouldn't lose to, which is almost everybody. And then they'll be fine. But I'll be really curious to see what kind of a seed Memphis gets, even if they win all the way out, because there's nobody left on their schedule that helps them at all.
Jerry, you've got UConn as a 9 seed right now going west. Has there been a defending national champion that's been a double-digit seed the following year?
Oh, off the top of my head, I can't think of one, but probably. I haven't looked. We probably had a defending champ not even show up the next year. But I haven't got it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And I really need to go, guys. I have another commitment. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, Jerry, we appreciate your time, man. Thanks.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Jerry.
Let's take a break here on Main Street Sports Today. When we come back, we'll continue the Monday Mirror, talking a little bit more basketball. Stay tuned.
Do you wanna be a bad man? Yes, you do. Do you wanna taste sweet salvation underneath the summer moon? Do you need another hand now? Yes, you do. Go see Miss Josie down on Columbus Avenue. All right, Columbus Avenue.
At Delta Dental of Tennessee, we know our success begins and ends with providing superior quality service, and that includes serving those who need it most. This year, we're celebrating 25 years of giving back to the community we call home. Delta Dental, along with our Smile 180 Foundation, supports Tennessee's dental colleges and oral health education, children's hospitals, free and reduced cost dental clinics, and other like-minded charities. Here's to the next 25 plus years of ensuring healthy smiles.
Whether you're an athlete or a weekend warrior, when it comes to your performance, don't settle for anything less than excellence. We're proud to announce that Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic is now Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, where we are redefining sports medicine and orthopedics. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance's team of expert sports medicine physicians understands the unique demands of your body. TOA Columbia specializes in personalized orthopedic care, offering state-of-the-art treatments for everything from sports injuries to joint replacements. Learn more at toacolumbia.com. Monday Mirror continues here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. That's Wade Neely. I'm Maurice Patton. As we said, we'll continue the basketball talk because, again, Vanderbilt did pick up a big win over the weekend, defeating visiting Mississippi State 77-72 in the return of Malik Dia, former Vanderbilt signee, who is now a Rebel via Belmont, and I'm sure we'll talk more about him and that game tomorrow when we have Joe Sullivan with us. I don't know if you saw any of the highlights, but one of them for Ole Miss was a three-pointer from about the sideline at the right free throw extended from Dia, and he stroked it like it was a layup. I think that's what has kind of fascinated folks about his game pretty much the whole time. A big guy who can really knock that shot down. And I think he was their leading scorer Saturday night. Yeah, 22.7 boards in a 5-point loss for Ole Miss. But yeah, as we said going into that game, and as Jerry kind of echoed in the last segment before he had to take off, big win for Vanderbilt in terms of keeping their NCAA tournament talk going. Obviously, they do need to get one on the road, but you got to get those at home as well.
Yeah, for sure. And for Vanderbilt, this is going to sound weird, right? But by winning the game, they're also not losing, and they're in a weird spot. They need kind of nice wins, but they also just need to avoid losses from here on out. A signature win like at Texas A&M would certainly be great, but as Jerry just mentioned, if you lose the next three, Missouri, Arkansas, and Georgia, it kind of doesn't really do you any favors. So that is a nice victory for Vanderbilt. really, if nothing else, just to kind of get them back to good, because they had kind of fallen into a funk, and all of that good momentum, all that good juju had kind of seemingly started to slip from them. Murderer's row or not, with Auburn, Tennessee, and Kentucky, 3 losses in a row is 3 losses in a row. And that was a nice one to be able to get, especially playing at home versus Ole Miss.
18-9 overall, 6-8 in league play right now. And you know, as much as you'd like to get one on the road, if they just hold serve at home and they get to 8-10, which is kind of what we've talked about with Joe Sullivan on various occasions, 8-10 might be enough in this league.
Might be enough. And the good news is, you know, it might be enough, and the bubble could, you know, break in your favor, right?
Mm-hmm.
It might also be enough, and then all of a sudden the right team or the wrong team wins or loses a game in the stretch, and now all of a sudden you become a team on the bubble. The weird thing about it is sometimes you don't decide if you're on the bubble or not. Your resume kind of is impacted by what the other teams do. But if you're Vanderbilt, if you can somehow, again, piece together an extra win or two, it'd be really, really nice. The Missouri win would be great at home, but if you could somehow, some way, snag that Texas A&M win, even as Jerry just said, you could probably still lose all 3 and find yourself smack dab on the bubble, which, looking in the grand scheme of things, if you're a Vanderbilt fan going into this season, you'll take being on the bubble, right?
Right. Yeah.
It tells you where you've come right now, the fact you're going to be kind of upset if you don't make the tournament.
Yeah, just the fact that you're in that conversation at this point, coming from where they're coming from, has to be a little bit of a victory. I mean, I know they're not into moral victories over there on West End, but just the reality of it, you didn't expect to be here. Kind of like football.
Yeah, putting a team together kind of from scratch. I mean, it can be done a little easier in basketball for sure because of, you know, the significance of 1 or 2 players, but also just the sheer roster size. But putting together a team this quickly with a brand new coaching staff and being in this position, you're playing with house money in a lot of regards if you're Vanderbilt.
What's really wild about this Vanderbilt team, and I don't know if it's cool or not necessarily, but, you know, it's different names from night to night. Chris Mignon was the big mover for him on Saturday. Had a big game for him, finished with 16.7 boards, one of 4 double-digit scores for him in that win. But you know, a lot of times you're talking about Hoggart or Edwards or McLaughlin, but again, it was Mignon on Saturday that kind of got them over the hump in that 5-point victory. And I imagine that makes them tough to get ready for, but you know, maybe you'd like a little bit more consistency from night to night, but it's nice to have different folks that can go out and get it done, I would think.
You would think so, but I mean, I think that's also kind of the function of the roster turnover. You haven't had a chance to go out and get your one guy, right? You haven't had a chance to go out and get those 2 or 3 studs, and it has to be. If there wasn't this team effort across the board from Vanderbilt and Byington in his first season, I don't think we're having this conversation at all. This is a team that is kind of rising tide lifting all boats, to use a phrase there, because they have to. It's not a function of the team. Yeah, they're all piecing together well, and everybody's having fun and being a great teammate, but they kind of have had no choice because of the turnover. Give them another year or two when they have an extra superstar here and there, and then you can kind of approach your game plan, your roster management a little differently. But for now, it's all hands on deck, to say the least, and it's been fun to watch.
Not sure Chaz Lanier could have picked a better time to have his signature game. 30 points, 8 threes at College Station on Saturday in Tennessee's 77-69 win, in a game that, you know, when we talked to Ben McKee on Thursday, obviously had some concerns written all over it just because it's a road game and it's College Station, and, you know, it had, you know, rock fight type of vibes coming from it. So to go in there and actually get some offense and for him to be out front with that had to be nice for Tennessee folks to see.
Ain't no doubt. And this was a good one. This was a fun one. And I was in the Pacific time zone this weekend, so the 9 a.m. start time was a little jarring for me. But I'll tell you what, there were a lot of folks tuned in and watching Tennessee. Every TV that I walked by, more often than not, on Saturday morning had Tennessee on. And there were, you know, a lot of folks paying attention to that game because it's a national implications, a top 10 battle. And Tennessee kind of flexes its muscle. This is still a team that when it's playing at its absolute best can be in the discussion of an Auburn Duke type situation. They haven't been playing at their best for a long, long time, but when they do, these are the types of performances and these are the types of wins that they are certainly capable of. That was a nice victory for the Vols on the road.
Yeah, that's one that gets your attention. It's like it's almost that rumors of Tennessee's demise have been greatly exaggerated. Maybe I don't know if you go that far, just because we've seen what they can be when they're not at their best. But yeah, this was kind of vintage Vols Saturday there. Zakai with 16 and 7 assists. Gainey with 14 off the bench, and you got to like that as well. And they were 13 of 27 from behind the arc. The ball going through the hole makes everybody feel better.
Yeah, Tennessee's hitting 13 threes. They're going to win a lot of games. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that right now. That's a team that plays defense well enough, but also finds other ways to get the offense going. That's bonus baskets for Tennessee, and that's a big, big victory for them.
We talked a little bit about Missouri and Arkansas. And I like the way Jerry kind of characterized that situation. That was a desperate Arkansas team in terms of their NCAA tournament chances, and they got Missouri on their floor Saturday and took care of business in that one, 92-85.
And seeing this one, just based on what we thought we kind of knew about the teams, just when you thought you could kind of trust Missouri a little bit, it kind of proves, the only real team that is kind of unflappable, so to speak, does appear to be Auburn at this point. Any other team is kind of almost they have to show up or else they're going to be in trouble. And Missouri didn't necessarily show up, but we also got the benefit of Arkansas, who is kind of like a Vanderbilt version on steroids, right? Calipari might have expedited, and I know they've had some key injuries this year, but they're still playing with a little bit more top-end talent than Vanderbilt. And when that top-end talent is on the same page, is playing well, this is the type of win that they can go out and snag. And I'll be real curious to see. I think their body of work maybe, and with injuries, it may not be enough to really kind of fuel them, but their schedule, if nothing else, is great for them. They got the win versus Missouri, and then they close with Texas, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt before they wrap it up versus Mississippi State. So maybe Arkansas, if there ever was a time to kind of start kicking things into gear down the stretch, this is it.
Now, Texas and Mississippi State are at home. They go to South Carolina. They go to Vanderbilt. But I tell you, man, that environment over there, when they get it going, it can be, I don't know if intimidating is the right word, but it can be quite raucous. So home is a little bit of a boost for the Hogs, I think. We mentioned South Carolina. Congrats to the Gamecocks. Finally won one over the weekend. They got Texas.
Yeah, and Texas has got, man, that's one team we did not get a chance to really tap into with Jerry, because Texas has got to be on major alert right now. Not just metrics-wise, but just, if nothing else, if you think reputation matters any and all to the committee, just the fact that you say the words, you lost to South Carolina, I know they're a good team, and, I know that they've just kind of been snake bit with the way their season has gone. But that's a loss that could set you back just in terms of reputation alone. So good win for the Gamecocks. First one is always sweet. But Texas has got to be really frustrated with that one from Saturday.
That's a tough one for Rodney Terry and the Longhorns for sure. Swinging into Sunday, Tennessee was down 37-28 in Gainesville at halftime yesterday. 37-28. Digest that for a second, because they scored 37 points in the third quarter and turned that game completely on its head and went on to knock Florida off. 37 points in a quarter. I don't know that there's a whole lot else to say. When they get that defense going and when they're knocking down shots, and then when they're knocking down threes, they are really hard to handle, and Florida kind of saw that yesterday in an 86-78 loss.
Yeah, Tennessee survives what would have been a kind of a gross loss, right? You know, Florida right there at 500. But you're right. You score 37 in a quarter. They gave up 20, which is right around what they gave up to Florida every quarter for the duration of that game. But when you go out and you have that's the kind of the top end level that Tennessee is capable of. And that kind of makes you a little concerned if you're the rest of the SEC, because Tennessee's kind of been that all year long. When they kind of click and get it all together, they can beat anybody. As we saw with
anybody.
UConn. Yeah. But the question is, can they put it all together? And right now the answer's kind of largely been, we got to wait and see. Yeah.
Maybe.
When they're at their absolute best, they can destroy anybody. And the fact that they were able to do that kind of save some face and get a nice win on the road to Florida. That's good to keep things kind of trending in the upward direction there for the Lady Vols.
I think the concern might be coming out of, again, an 8-point win at Florida, was that you had to be at your best because you certainly weren't at your best early on. If you had just kind of been meh early, maybe you don't have to go out and score 37 in a quarter. But the fact that you've got that in your back pocket doesn't hurt. Michaela Blake's only 19 points Sunday as Vanderbilt lost to visiting South Carolina 82-54.
Yeah, I mean, what else do you need to say, right?
Yeah. What was crazy, though, watching that game and seeing some of the Southeastern Conference figures that she's being mentioned with in terms of the 50-point games with Shannon Johnson and Jocelyn Penn from South Carolina, who I saw play eons ago, and her average and being mentioned along with LaToya Thomas from Mississippi State, who was an absolute stud. And again, she's just a freshman. And again, I hate to, be a wet blanket, but in this day and time, how long is she at Vanderbilt?
Well, I'm sitting here thinking, hey, it's great she only scored 19 because Dawn Staley was getting ready to go knock on that door after the game and say, you went for 50 versus us. How about you come play for us next year?
Come and get 50 for us. Yeah, let me holler at you for a minute. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's and I hate that this is where we are, but this is where we are.
I mean, yeah, it's part of the beast, and especially a part of beast at a school like Vanderbilt, right? Who's kind of, a nice, great story as an institution, but they certainly are not in the blue blood realm. And speaking of blue bloods real quick, big win for South Carolina, obviously on the road. And, maybe on a day where Notre Dame goes down in double overtime, South Carolina kind of creeping back up in after it looked like they were kind of toiling a little bit.
And that tournament, number 1 Texas, is going to be riveting. So we'll be keeping an eye on all of that here next week. This is the final week of the regular season for SEC women's play.
Yeah, Tennessee at Kentucky, huge game on Thursday night. Final 2 games for pretty much everybody. So we'll get a pretty firm kind of feel for where everybody is sitting after this weekend, obviously.
Absolutely. Hour number 1 here on the Monday Mirror edition of Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, is in the books. Let's take a break. Come back for hour number 2, talk a little football. Stick around.
Hi, I'm Dr. Vilay Saisuka, CEO and founder of Premier Foot and Ankle Centers of Tennessee here in Murfreesboro. We offer foot and ankle care from ingrown toenails to diabetic foot wounds. We also fix ankle fractures and things like that.
Call us today to schedule an appointment. We look forward to seeing you.
Because here at Premier Foot and Ankle, we believe that
the journey begins with happy feet.
Whether you're an athlete or a weekend warrior, when it comes to your performance, don't settle for anything less than excellence. We're proud to announce that Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic is now Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, where we are redefining sports medicine and orthopedics. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance's team of expert sports medicine physicians understands the unique demands of your body. TOA Columbia specializes in personalized orthopedic care, offering state-of-the-art treatments for everything from sports injuries to joint replacements. Learn more at toacolumbia.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50 plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy, zioneagles.org or 931-388-5731. You can schedule your appointment. Go tour their campus. It is beautiful over there, and you're definitely going to want to see it. Again, it's zioneagles.org. Give them a call, 931-388-5731, and schedule your tour today. Custom Stone Handler supplies over 600 distributors and suppliers with quality stone products. Along with River Stone, we produce and distribute over 100 building, landscape, and other bulk products. Our goal is to provide quality products, service, and partnerships to ensure our customers' success. We firmly believe that the measure of any person or company is how they treat other people and customers. Give them a call at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStonehandlers.com.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
Hour number 2 of the Monday Mirror edition of Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, starts right now. That's Wade Neely. I'm Maurice Patton, and the Combine is off and running in Indianapolis. And if you are a team that's interested in Shedeur Sanders, how bothered are you that he's not going to throw at the Combine? Are you bothered? Does it matter?
I think if you're a team that's interested in Shedeur Sanders, you probably don't need to see anything already, right? I mean, the teams that perhaps quote unquote need, or definitely the teams that want him, if nothing else, you don't want him throwing and, maybe getting somebody else's attention is the way I'm thinking about that if I'm a GM. I'm not necessarily putting a ton of stock in that. And obviously we've seen, guys that don't go to the Combine still able to put together some nice tape elsewhere. I feel like you're okay with that.
Looking at an article regarding this topic on NFL.com, Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels didn't throw last year. Seemed to work out pretty well. It's been a trend recently for top quarterback prospects to sit out the drills at the unfamiliar territory of the Combine and throw at their pro days, which is what Sanders intends to do. And, I mean, I can see that, if for no other reason than maybe you're throwing to your guys. There's probably something to that as opposed to not necessarily having that report with those receivers that you're going to be throwing to in Indianapolis. So, I don't know. But it's I don't know how big a deal it is, but it's a deal. Now, during the season, he threw for 4,134 yards and 37 touchdowns. So it's not like he can't throw.
Yeah, and I mean, what you just said about, doing at the pro day, which I don't know if he'll be able to secure the services of Travis Hunter to come back to his pro day, but we'll see. But he certainly got, obviously, familiarity with the rest of the guys. But you're exactly right. You that's how Zach Wilson ends up as the number 2 pick because he absolutely dazzled everybody. Well, he dazzled the Jets at least with his pro day performance. Mm-hmm. And so being able to do that, like I said, I think if you go to the Combine, if you've already got the whispers of being the top QB, certainly the top 2 QBs, what really good, quote unquote, can you do? If this was a really, really weak draft or a really, really, weak quarterback draft, if we're talking guys, no quarterbacks in the first round, maybe then you consider going to the Combine. Maybe you have a chance to elevate yourself. But I think Shedeur is probably okay. And to me, that says, if a team or two is already interested, why give, a chance for them to maybe pick apart and see something they don't necessarily like? Keep things on your terms.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of like you say about some of these high school kids going to these exposure camps. Yeah, you get exposed. All right. I mean, and this time of year, it kind of gets to be the silly season between the end of the season and the draft, where folks are just kind of starting to shoot holes in people's game and that kind of thing anyway. And so to your point, maybe by not throwing, he lessens the opportunity for folks to find what's wrong with Shedeur Sanders rather than what's right with Shedeur Sanders. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's got his reasons for not throwing, and I'm sure they make sense. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting that you go to the event, but you're not going to take part in it in its entirety. But that young man's, it's his future, and two, he's got a bright one. And so whatever he can do to, kind of secure that and keep things on his terms, like you said, more power to him. Speaking of quarterback,
hey, real quick, at number 3, he's got a guy that knows a little bit of something about being able to play the professional game, kind of whisper in his ear. So Shedeur ain't necessarily making these decisions on his own. Pops is looking out for him in the best regard as well.
Yeah, that's when you've got a Hall of Famer that you can, reach out to like that. That's not that shouldn't be underestimated, just in terms of the importance of it going through this journey as Shedeur is. Speaking of Dion and Dallas, are the Cowboys going to take a quarterback? It sounds as if that's on their radar.
Well, I mean, we've talked a lot about their quarterback room and the wild contract that Prescott is in and the weird kind of continued Trey Lance NFL tenure. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked by anything the Cowboys do. I wouldn't be shocked if the Cowboys went out and took a quarterback in the first round for some reason. I mean, anything and everything feels like it's always on the table with that franchise.
Prescott is, given the size of his contract, this may not be a shock necessarily, but apparently he is the only quarterback currently under contract for Dallas. So I don't know what Lance's situation is. I guess he's a free. Yeah, he and Cooper Rush are both set to be free agents. So,
well, then, yeah, you got to draft one. I mean, unless you're just going to sign somebody, off the scrap heap. And if you're Dallas, maybe, especially Prescott, has been injured at various points in his career. Maybe you grab somebody a little bit later, see if you can develop them. And if nothing else, if you can develop them, you kind of turn one of those two guys, whether it's Prescott or whoever you draft, you turn a little draft capital out of the deal there down the road.
That's wild that is where they are, that they've only got one quarterback signed at this point. And Dak is coming off an injury. So
right.
You got to sign somebody, though, don't you? Just because Dak is coming off an injury. And I don't know that he's going to be ready to go through preseason or OTAs or whatever else. Somebody's got to run things.
Well, and that's what I'd kind of mentioned, right? And if you are not going to bring back Rush, or, who knows if they'll bring one of those two guys back. But if you only bring back one, then you kind of, even teams that are pretty solid in their quarterback options, kind of, you always want to have somebody in the hopper, whether that's, maybe find a diamond in the rough for your own franchise, or if nothing else, you can turn that into a different asset down the road. So if they only bring back one of those two guys, then yeah, it definitely feels like snag somebody at some point. And I don't know the particulars on either one of their contracts, but it definitely feels like both will not be returning to back up Prescott.
Yeah, and if it's only one, it certainly feels like it's going to be Rush. I mean, as we watch the end of the season unfold and Trey Lance couldn't get on the field, it's that whole situation was really odd to me, even at a point where, winning or losing wasn't going to impact the bottom line for this team. Why you didn't throw Lance out there just to see what he would look like was really kind of odd to me. So it feels like the book has certainly been closed on Trey Lance in Dallas, and I don't know that it ever really got open, but that's just an odd situation all the way around, given the promise that it felt like he came into the league with, first at San Francisco and then, getting moved to Dallas. So
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting, right? If he does not return, someone will snag him in some capacity, whether he fits that pure backup role or whether it's, kind of as your quote unquote emergency guy. I think everybody's still, because we didn't see a lot of them in Dallas, there's still kind of this odd, intrigue, I think, for at least one or two franchises. We're talking about still a guy that's only 24 years old. So somebody will give him a little bit of a deal here, and it'll be interesting to see who that is and kind of what their plans are for Trey Lance.
For sure. Former Vanderbilt defensive coordinator Bob Shoop is back on West End. He's been brought in as senior defensive analyst under Clark Lee. He was DC under Franklin from 2011 to 2013. Most recently, he was at Marshall as safeties coach last year. Spent a year with the Birmingham Stallions of the USFL. 1 year at South Florida, 1 year at Miami, and 1 year with the Wolverines, in addition to a couple of seasons up at UT as defensive coordinator. He's also been at Mississippi State. And again, had some success at Vanderbilt. They were top 25 in total defense all three of his seasons in town. Held opponents to 18.8 points per game in 2012. Forced 30 turnovers a year later, the 10th best mark nationally. And they won 9 games each of those 2 years. So good guy to have around, would seem like.
Yeah, absolutely. Bring in a guy who's got some defensive coordinator experience at a number of different stops, varying degrees of success at some high-profile programs. Bring him in as an analyst. That's a great get for Vanderbilt in that regard. Kind of finding somebody that has defensive caliber type top-end coaching ability and kind of stashing him a little bit lower on your staff. That seems like a good get for Lee and company.
Yeah, it really does. And just, kind of adding a little bit more salt to that staff that's already got Jerry Kill, among other folks. So, obviously Kill has been a boon for that offense, and maybe Shoop just kind of continues to help shore up that defense. So, Vanderbilt kind of got some expectations coming off the year that they're coming off of, and trying to get things right to get ready for 25. Feels like Shoop, like you said, is a nice addition to those efforts. We talked late last week about former Georgia and current Miami quarterback Carson Beck. He and his girlfriend Hannah Cavender having 3 cars stolen. Her Range Rover, his Mercedes, and his Lambo. Well, the Mercedes and the Range Rover have been recovered and an arrest has been made. The Lambo is still at large. And in Miami, good luck. Tyquan Anderson, a former defensive tackle at True North Classical Academy in Miami, confessed to the burglary during questioning. Faces charges of burglary of an occupied dwelling, first-degree grand theft, and grand theft of a vehicle. He and 3 others broke into the home and, again, stole the 3 cars. This is nuts. It's just amazing to me, the whole situation. Again, Beck getting a Lamborghini once he signed his NIL deal at Georgia. Was a lot made of that at the time, and guess he took it with him to Miami and picked up another one. And been a lot of high-profile thefts in and around Miami here over the last few months, and I don't know if this is connected to that or not, but it's wild times in Miami. Be careful down there.
Hey, I got to be careful. And, this is the part that was interesting, too. It sounds like at least one of the cars, though, was in the garage. But, I mean, Spencer Hall, I got to give Spencer Hall some props. I was listening to his appearance on The Right Time with Bomani Jones this weekend. And Spencer pointed out, You know, a couple of the cars, though, were not even in. I mean, there's only one car in the garage. So you got 2 cars on the street. I don't necessarily know I'm leaving any car on the street in Miami if they're of that caliber, let alone my precious Benz or my precious Range Rover, right? I mean, you got to protect all those at all costs.
It would seem. I mean, you maybe you need a bigger garage if you can't get them all in off the street. I don't know.
Yeah. If you've got the funds for that, you at least got to be able to have a 3-car garage. Come on now.
Oh, one would think. Hashtag priorities there, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Finally, before we get out of this segment, we mentioned a few weeks ago Deshaun Jackson had been hired as head coach at Delaware State, the former Eagles receiver, among other positions. Well, he was also with the Washington franchise of the NFL at one time, and he's being joined on his staff by former Washington running back Clinton Portis, who played at the U. This will be the first coaching gig for Portis, former NFL Rookie of the Year with the Broncos, who had some legal issues at one time, got caught up in a fraudulent situation dealing with some medical insurance, I think, but has gotten over that, and again is now joining the staff at Delaware State with Deshaun Jackson. So should be interesting, should help with some recruiting, and should help with some instruction, I would think, as well.
You would think, right? I mean, that's got to be your blueprint if you're kind of approaching this, is to try and get some funds. I'm reading an article on Sports Illustrated. 3 key elements you got to have here for Delaware State. Upgrades. They're looking already at $25 to $30 million in facility upgrades. Veterans on staff. Yeah, you bring in Portis. They also got former NFL receiver Sammy Parker and an offensive lineman from the Patriots, Eugene Chung, on the list. That's kind of step 2. And then local recruiting, right? Everything about this is to just kind of elevate the profile. And then just kind of draw the buzz. I said it from the jump. These hires, especially at these smaller schools that have not had a great track record, especially Delaware State, who's been really, really bad, the goal is to try and just build the buzz and kind of just restore a little sense of pride. And, you know, by doing this, you're kind of following a nice little blueprint. And it'll be interesting. I think some folks will kind of be, if nothing else, keeping tabs. You know, you see how Deshaun and company kind of do as a member next year up in Delaware State.
I'm intrigued to know whether or not Delaware State and Norfolk State play each other. You would think that they do, but I don't.
Yeah, you got to draw up a former NFL standout classic of some sort, right?
No doubt. Yeah, I mean, you got to get. Would Deshaun and Vic have been in Philadelphia at the same time? Late? I don't know. We got to check on that. We got questions. We need to try to get answers. And as we close out this segment, we will do that. Also, we're going to get some answers in the next segment from Emily Crowell of the TSSAA as we talk a little girls flag football that gets rolling this week across Middle Tennessee for sure, and points beyond as well. So stick around here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Riley, a certified physician associate here at Premier Foot and Ankle Centers of Tennessee. We have a couple locations, Murfreesboro, McMinnville, as well as Franklin. We treat people of all ages. We're excited to get you back on your feet and hope we can help you today.
Call us today to schedule an appointment. We look forward to seeing you.
Because here at Premier Foot and Ankle, we believe that
the journey begins with happy feet.
You're seeing the signs too, right?
What signs?
Whether you're an athlete or a weekend warrior, when it comes to your performance, don't settle for anything less than excellence. We're proud to announce that Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint Clinic is now Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia, where we are redefining sports medicine and orthopedics. Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance's team of expert sports medicine physicians understands the unique demands of your body. TOA Columbia specializes in personalized orthopedic care, offering state-of-the-art treatments for everything from sports injuries to joint replacements. Learn more at toacolumbia.com.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50 plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy, zioneagles.org or 931-388-5731. You can schedule your appointment. Go tour their campus. It is beautiful over there, and you're definitely going to want to see it. Again, it's zioneagles.org. Give them a call, 931-388-5731, and schedule your tour today.
Piggly Wiggly, located in Neely's Mill Shopping Center, is Columbia's locally owned and operated Cost Plus 10 grocery store dedicated to serving the community with low prices and smiling faces. Piggly Wiggly offers fresh, hand-cut meats daily as well as daily hot plate lunches from their deli counter. You're certain to see smiling faces and a helping hand when you're here at Piggly Wiggly. Come by and check out our fresh produce, high-quality meats, and more. Down home, down the street, we'll see you at the Pig.
The Monday Mirror continues here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. That's Wade Neely. I'm Maurice Patton. November 1st, Norfolk State at Delaware State.
Buckle up, baby.
There we go. Big MEAC matchup there. Pleased to have with us now from the Tennessee Secondary School Athletic Association, Emily Crowell, as we talk a little girls flag football. Emily, thanks for joining us, first of all. What is your title?
I'm one of our assistant executive directors, and thanks for having me today.
No, absolutely. And you are pretty much the point person for girls flag, as Mark Reeves assured us when we had him on a couple of weeks ago, and we were trying to kind of delve into that reign. He said, no, you need to talk to Emily. So we are talking to Emily. I know that Williamson County and Metro Nashville are starting play this week, Emily, specifically on Wednesday. Those two are kind of playing a crossover schedule here through March. Do you know who else locally and across the state is getting cranked up? Is anybody else going this early?
I think this might be the earliest. This week is the earliest I've heard for the spring, but I know Rutherford County is going to get going soon. We've got some a little north of here in Sumner, so kind of all over, and then west and east as well. We've got stuff happening this spring.
But this is the earliest because it's spring sports aren't bad enough as it is. We got to get outside for girls flag before February even gets gone. But it's an exciting time. As you know, I was able to speak with you for a little bit out at the wrestling tournament this past weekend about this. Tennessee last April became the 10th state nationally to sanction girls flag football, and it just kind of continues this state's efforts to, recognize female athletes, it feels like.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe in the early years we were not as known for advancing girls sport. I'm glad that we're there now. With girls wrestling, you and I think talked a little bit about that. But yeah, thrilled that we have girls flag football coming on. I think there's 15 states now that have sanctioned it, and it looks like a lot more are coming. So glad to be leading that charge.
Emily, I want to ask, kind of from the initial announcement to kind of where we sit today, what else has changed in terms of getting things ready for this first rollout here?
Yeah, well, it's kind of exploded more so than I ever thought it was. I was telling Maurice when we sanctioned last April, we only had 36 schools that were participating, and I was hoping by this point we would have about 72. We actually have 156. So it exploded far more than I thought it would, but that's a great thing. We've seen it, in every part of the state. So from my perspective, what we've been doing is just kind of doing some initial classification, putting the schools into districts geographically, just so they can set up their games. And then we will have a postseason invitational, which is a part of our emerging sport philosophy now, is that we'll have an invitational and see how it goes. And then hopefully our board will look at a state championship for the sport.
Emily, I also got to ask, were you could tell the truth here. Were you happy or a little upset that maybe you were not featured in the Super Bowl commercial when the NFL, I thought it was so neat that, you mentioned now we're up to 15 out of 50 states, but the NFL with a commercial during the Super Bowl, which was one of the better ones, I think, over the course of the broadcast. It was really neat that they're making such a push to try and get as a viable varsity sport in 50 states now.
Absolutely. I was so pleased to see that commercial. I agree. I think it was one of the better ones that ran. Yeah, it's great. The NFL has been so supportive and has really been on the forefront of pushing it in all of the states, even states that don't have an NFL market. So that's been good to see. But yeah, just that's amazing. That's not something we would have seen, when I was in high school. So it's great to see women's sports in general just getting the recognition that it deserves.
Emily Crowell of the TSSAA joining us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Emily, what would you attribute that boom in 1 year to? Was it just that people were waiting for it to become sanctioned, or was that what it took to kind of get it in front of some folks, or in 1 year to blow up like that? What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting because we're trying to look at who's playing, and it's kind of a mixture of everybody. Like we're seeing kids that aren't playing any other sport come out and try out flag football. We're seeing kids that are playing all different other sports. So there's not really any segment of the high school population that it's necessarily pointing to. But I think overall, it just shows like girls have always had an interest in football. I mean, we've grown up watching tackle football, and it's so much a part of society that I think girls are just jumping at the chance to be able to play for themselves.
When you're talking to these schools about how this is evolving, Emily, are the kids driving this? Are the athletic departments driving this? How is this coming about? Are a bunch of girls like Shanghai coaches and saying, hey, we want to play football and we want you to coach it? Or how is that coming about?
I think that's definitely happening in some cases, that you just have a lot of enthusiasm from the girls themselves, but it's a mixture. In some schools, the tackle football coach has gotten on board and is really excited to be able to work with the girls and teach them the sport. So it's kind of a mixture, but we've definitely seen girls being very enthusiastic. I know in talking to some, they're having 90 or 100 girls try out, which is a lot, obviously. So they're having to cut down. It's almost like an NFL roster that you're cutting down before the season.
And I know that, when you've got a sport just getting started like that, you really don't want to be in the business of turning kids away.
Right. I think we've got some JV programs, though, that have already popped up. So that's always a great sign for growth of the sport.
Emerging sport invitational tournament this year. How quickly can that become, or how quickly can that reach the next level and actually be a sanctioned championship sport?
Yeah, well, we wrote emerging sport into the bylaws at the same time last year because we just needed a little guidance on how to add new sports. And so the way it was written was that when the staff felt that the growth was enough and that we could put on a state championship, in addition to the board thinking that the growth geographically was enough, that they would consider a state championship. So I am very optimistic that our board will look at that in June and hopefully sanction, well, not sanction, just put on a state championship for 2026 is my hope.
Emily, I'm also curious, as you guys kind of move this process forward, how much growth do you guys have accounted for? Are you guys necessarily prepared if after just one season, we see just another massive influx. I'm just kind of curious on the timeline and the rollout process in your mind.
Yeah, I think we just have to look at it like any other sport. If we have a bunch more join, I'm sure there'll be a push to look at classification. Do we divide it by school population, that kind of thing. But from our office perspective, I think we're equipped to handle however many schools want to do it. It's just exciting. The NFHS is working on a rule book that will come out next year, so there'll be some changes to it, but it's just kind of a fun time for us, and we're all learning as we go.
And then I'm seeing 16 districts already kind of drawn up. I'm assuming that was just pretty much geographically put together there. It sounds like there is room to kind of make adjustments on the fly as we continue to kind of grow. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That was us just initially kind of drawing where they are on a map. But yeah, I think as we get more, I could definitely see us having more than one classification.
Emily, I'm trying to pull up those classifications real quick because I've got a question that I think I need to ask you, relative to girls wrestling, where it's not Division I and Division II, it's just girls wrestling. Do you anticipate it being that way for girls flag football as well? Because I don't know. It looks like Silverdale is playing in the Chattanooga area, but I don't know that there are a lot of independent programs playing or set to play girls flag at this point.
We haven't seen that yet. I'm still hopeful some of those private schools will jump on. But yeah, initially I think we'll definitely it will just be one division. They won't be divided public and private, until that becomes necessary.
Okay. All right. How quickly? Well, I mean, I guess I was kind of going in that direction a second ago, but when would you expect maybe for this to actually be a championship sport?
Yeah, I'm hopeful that next spring, we have a championship. The challenge right now is we have not defined a season. So part of the emerging sport criteria, we allowed a couple of districts to play in the fall because that worked better for them. So I think our first step is just identifying the season that our membership wants to play in. So we'll probably be surveying all the schools that participated this spring just to get their impact before we present that to the board.
Yeah, I guess the Chattanooga area and the Knoxville area played in the fall. Is that right?
They did. They played a late fall season, like early November into mid-December, and there were some advantages to that. There's definitely pros and cons both ways for those seasons. So I think we have to get a good handle on what our membership wants.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Are you going to be getting out to any games Wednesday, or are you going to wait until it warms up a little bit?
I don't think I'll make it this Wednesday, but I do hope to see a lot this season. So I'm looking forward to see as all these new schools come on. I've over the past few years with the pilot program, I've seen Metro Nashville and Williamson get going, but looking forward to seeing a lot of other counties involved.
Have you had much contact either with the folks in Williamson or in Davidson County as far as them approaching their season and what they've got going on? Again, they've gone to Wednesday games this year. Williamson County had been playing on Sunday afternoon, so they've made that move, and I'm not sure what exactly the thought was behind that.
I think that was in a way an effort to legitimize the sport a little bit more by not forcing them to play on Sunday. I think giving them a school day was part of that. I'm excited that Metro Nashville and Williamson County are playing each other this year. With our pilot programs, everyone kind of stayed in their own county. So this is the first time we're really seeing crossover between counties. So I'm looking forward to see how that goes.
Great. Emily Crowell of the TSSAA joining us here on Main Street Sports today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Again, girls flag football here in the Mid-State gets going on Wednesday as Williamson County and Metro Nashville will be playing crossover schedule for the first month or so before they get into district play. Williamson County gets started that first week in April, and I guess Metro will as well. Talk about that postseason tournament. It is scheduled for what, the second weekend in May, I guess?
It's going to be on a Wednesday, Thursday, just because of availability of facilities. But May 7th and 8th, we're going to have a postseason invitational for girls flag. What that consists of is basically the winner of each district of those 16 districts will advance. The first day, we're going to do a pool play kind of situation just to match people up in pools, see how they do, and then that will feed into a single elimination bracket the next day, and we'll have a final championship game there in the stadium at Richard Siegel Park. That will be our invitational championship for this year.
Okay, sounds good. I think folks around here will be looking forward to that, and be sure and check that out as it progresses. We will have coverage at mainstreetmurray.com and at Main Street Preps, I'm sure. So look out for that. Emily, appreciate your time. I'm sure you're recovering from wrestling this weekend and getting ready for hoops. So in addition to flag football. So appreciate you taking some time with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. Let's take a break here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. When we come back, we'll get into the grab bag to close out the show. Stick around.
So, you want to be a part of the Busy Bee team, huh? Well, how do you see yourself fitting into the organization? Oh, I get it. You want to be a weather bee.
It's the final segment of Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. It's the Monday Mirror. That's Wade Neely. I'm Maurice Patton. We had a little bit of a break from the Preds for the Four Nations face-off tournament. They got back into action on Saturday, picked up a big win against Colorado 2-1, and you're thinking, okay, here we go. Not so fast, my friend. Drop a 5-0 decision yesterday to the Devils. And I guess this is just kind of where we are with this team. Tough to watch.
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of said where the Preds are and kind of what they're capable of. They can beat any team on any given night. The Devils are one of the top teams. Colorado is certainly kind of on an upward trend, but they're not necessarily maybe McKinnon just had a little rust in his boots from celebrating a little too hard after Canada's victories. Maybe what you can chalk that up to, because, yeah, they did not look great yesterday. And MoneyPuck.com currently has the Preds projected for third lowest points, along with some familiar company, the Sharks and the Blackhawks. So, this is kind of what you're going to be subjected to. Still got the trade deadline coming up in about another, 10 days, 2 weeks, give or take. And so Nashville using maybe this next couple of weeks to determine what, if any, moves kind of need to be done, not just for this season, obviously, but kind of going forward, because, it's kind of up and down, to say the least.
Up and down, mostly down, and it doesn't get any easier. You've got the Panthers coming in tomorrow night, one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, and then you've got the Jets coming in on Thursday night, the top team in the Western Conference. So, again, doesn't get any easier.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is going to be, if I'm Barry Trotz and I'm kind of in the management team of Nashville, you kind of have a firm grasp on, where they have a 0.2% chance on Money Puck to make the playoffs. I mean, you could pretty much throw that out the window. On the other hand, they have a 9% chance of getting the top pick in the NHL draft. So maybe you go the other direction. We obviously talk a lot about tanking in the NBA, and we've talked about it in the NFL. This will be the opportunity for Nashville to kind of decide. They're still a team they have just enough pieces to kind of make you want the wins now, but they also have enough younger guys that need some seasoning to kind of get ready to take themselves and take their game and maybe the fate of the franchise to the next level. They're kind of in a weird spot. They tease you just enough to kind of give you that glimmer of hope, but it is not super hopeful right now in Nashville.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was wondering about. What approach do you take to the rest of this season at this point? I mean, you're not going to make the postseason. If you did, you're not going to be in it for very long. And, it feels very similar to where we were with the Titans back in the fall.
Feels similar to the Titans. The only thing, is Nashville just you still harken back and you're still holding out. That's why I guess maybe there's 0.2 rather than 0.0. The Sharks and the Blackhawks, four guys, they're listed at 0.0. But we've seen that team go on runs, and we've seen them. The only bad part is, you're also chasing, in addition to chasing all the other teams, the rest of your division and your conference is pretty strong. So it's not as if Nashville's able to pick off a few teams. They're not chasing just one or two kind of saggers in the standings, so to speak. You're having to kind of really just put things together. So it'd be nice to get some momentum. I think a lot of folks would be kind of frustrated at this point if they threw in the towel and just openly started tanking. The only bad thing, too, is we're talking hockey. Those guys don't know the word tank. I mean, they go out and put their guts on the line every single night. So they're in a weird spot. They're kind of just, unfortunately, I'm not going to say in a state of irrelevancy, but, man, they have just almost no identity right now because this is a franchise that some folks really thought they might be able to put some expectations together for this year, but the bulk of the roster is still kind of developing toward a run maybe in another year or two.
Another team trying to figure out its identity, I guess. The Nashville Soccer Club opened its season, played a scoreless draw with the visiting New England Revolution. First season opener under BJ Callahan. Wade, you don't want to draw any conclusions from one game, but what do you feel like the feel is around this team that, obviously struggled last year to the point that they had a midseason coaching change?
Yeah, and it's two different tales here because the good news is I think if you're Nashville Soccer, and I'm going to be covering NSC a little bit more this season for Main Street Nashville, so I'll be able to bring, a little bit more in depth as we get on. But Saturday, tale of two seasons. 0-0 last year. Not going to say you could set your watch by it, but under Gary Smith, that was kind of the baseline. They weren't going to give up a lot of goals. They weren't going to score a lot. However, Saturday night, even though you came away 0-0, Nashville dominated possession. There were large stretches of creative and attacking play. They weren't settling for the draw. In many regards, they were kind of snake-bitten. In many regards, they were kind of unlucky to have the draw. So if nothing else, on a cold kind of Saturday night at Geodis, props to those that did make it out to the home opener. It was a little more optimistic, if there were ever such a way to be optimistic about a goalless draw. There was much more optimism about the effort and the kind of inspiredness, if you will, from what we saw Saturday than what we had seen this time last year. Now, the question is, what will match number 2 look like, right? I mean, because this is a team that is not in a league that has some superstars, obviously, and has some teams like Cincinnati and some others that have really just built these powerhouse teams. It's going to be up to Nashville to kind of find and forge their identity. And it seems like they're hitching their wagons to offensive play. Things to be positive. It is not as grim as that score might look from Saturday night, which is kind of refreshing for Nashville.
Well, again, coming off the season that they're coming off of, you're looking for any positive you can find. Heading to New York, taking on the Red Bulls Saturday. And I don't know, again, going back to the Preds, I don't know that things get any easier for NSC with that trip.
May not get any easier, but a chance to get their first, road trip out of the year, and a chance to see if it felt like they were snake bit. Had a couple opportunities that were really should have been converted, and so I'm holding out optimism in that regard. They made the other thing. If you're Nashville, and hearkening back to Gary Smith, there were not a lot of matches, home or away, that they ever got blown out, and we've talked about it a time or two. Under Callahan, they're going to, under it's Coach Callahan, right? Yeah. Under BJ, spelled differently. That's what threw me off a little bit there from the other guy in Nashville. They're going to attack a little bit more. They're going to press a little more. So don't freak out if they perhaps lose a match, 4-1 or 4-2.
Mm-hmm.
But also don't freak out because, under Gary Smith, they were kind of playing a little more lifeless in terms of offense. They're going to maybe yield a little bit more goals. But the thought is maybe outscore your opposition rather than maybe just get lucky and try and grab a win or hang on for a draw.
What you're saying basically is there was more of a play not to lose, maybe feel around the Gary Smith teams?
Yeah, and that's just a function of the two coaches. Gary Smith, old crotchety British guy coming in, playing that old crotchety British style of football, right? Trying to, like you said, not lose. You want to defend home, and you want to make sure you don't lose at home. You want to at least grab a point if at all possible. But that kind of also developed into an ugly kind of aura, I guess, if you will, that kind of embodied who Nashville became. There's a difference between playing solid defense and not wanting to yield up a goal, but also not putting any resources into attacking play whatsoever. Callahan's kind of trying to navigate a little bit of both. Obviously, would like to keep as many clean sheets as possible, but would love to get the offensive production going. A lot of optimism for that one, even though it was 0-0 Saturday.
Here we go. As we mentioned,
and real quick, they didn't have a couple of key guys in there. Schaffelberg didn't play. That was the big one, and Acosta was out too. So, get those guys back in, and then we'll really see what they can do this weekend.
Okay. Athletes Unlimited entering its final week of play at Nashville Municipal Auditorium this week. They had their draft earlier today for the final week, and they play Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday this week. 5 o'clock and 7:30 on Thursday. It will be Team Bradford and Team Sims in the 5 o'clock game, Team Segrist and Team Harris in the 7:30 game. On Saturday, they play at 3 and 5:30. Make note of that. 3 and 5:30 Saturday. Team Harris, Team Sims in the early game, Team Bradford, Team Segrist in the late game. And then on Sunday, it's also 3 and 5:30. Harris and Bradford early, Sims and Segrist late. Thursday's games can be seen on FanDuel Sports and on the WNBA app. Friday's game, the early game, I'm sorry, not Friday. Saturday's 3 o'clock game will be on ESPN Plus. The 5:30 game will be on FanDuel and on the WNBA app. On Sunday, the early game will be on FanDuel and the app. The late game will be on ESPN Plus. And we will repeat all this as we get closer to game time, but wanted to make you aware, again, this is the final week for AU in Nashville, and it seems to have gone over really well, and I've got to get down there.
And Thursday night is going to be the night that you want to talk about some potential records falling. We Back Pat night. They already sold out of their initial allotment of shirts for Saturday or for Thursday night. On a couple week run where we just talked about the Tennessee Summit and the expansion and the WNBA possibly coming to Nashville. They're going to celebrate We Back Pat night, and they already breezed through those. You had to pick them up by Valentine's Day, and they were already sold out well before that deadline. So a chance on Thursday to really maybe go for the gusto in terms of their attendance, which has already been phenomenal as we've discussed on this show.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to get to this week's rosters and having a tough time. The AU website, not the most fan friendly, but anyway,
strike that from the record.
Yeah.
During this PSA here.
Yeah. Hey, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, the final 3 days of AU Pro basketball here in Nashville. Again, be sure and get out and go check them out. Wade, I know you were kind of out of town and out of reach a little bit, but wherever you were, you probably heard the New York Yankees have gotten rid of their facial hair ban.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious thing is what took them so long. It feels like the Yankees have given up, right? They lose the World Series in embarrassing fashion, and now the only thing that they had going for them, they've now turned their back on.
Yeah, you know what's funny is a number of folks kind of took them to task for that. It's like you guys were holding the line on this. Why now?
Yeah.
So
Don Mattingly, I mean, come on. I mean, what are we doing here? The Yankees feel like they've lost all relevancy at this point with this. We're not used to them getting embarrassed with simple fielding mistakes in the World Series, and now all of a sudden they've kind of cost themselves with the one thing that they had going for them. It feels like they kind of shortchanging themselves as a franchise a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that you just never expected them to change on, and I'm not real sure what it felt like. It was time. I can see it, but again, it feels like you're the Yankees. Facial hair policy been in place since '76. It's been attributed largely to George Steinbrenner's military background, but they've forced a number of folks to obviously shave and that kind of thing since they've joined the organization. It's a facial hair thing. It's a hairstyle thing as well. I mean, Oscar Gamble had to cut his afro back in the mid '70s. And a number of guys that got there with full beards and that kind of thing. I mean, Randy Johnson, folks like that had to cut them off. So for all of the folks that have had to trim up, why now do you change it? And I kind of feel bad for Devin Williams, the former Brewers closer who got traded there and had to shave his stuff off. And then weeks after doing so, it's like, y'all could have done this a couple of months ago and I wouldn't have had to shave, Why do you let him get to spring training and then come down with that?
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Supposedly he's the guy that really kind of, I find this part fascinating. He's the guy that goes to Steinbrenner and goes to Cashman to kind of discuss the rule. But I'm also like you. I'm like, hey, man, that's great. You finally listened to me and you finally changed the rule. I could have, learned that. We could have done that after the fact before I freaking went out and shaved here. I mean, we're now robbed too, right? One of the great Simpsons episodes, like I said, of all time is when Don Mattingly, gets overlooked because of his sideburns here. So, I mean, we're rewriting history here in a bad way for the Yankees. They're no longer, we already kind of knew it, but they're officially no longer the evil empire at this point.
Well, depends on who you ask. I think they still kind of hold that title in Boston and probably some other places. But yeah, it does kind of feel like they've been a little defanged, maybe, if nothing else. So, yeah, you can grow a beard if you're a Yankee now. So, again, I don't know if this prevented anybody from signing with the Yankees or anything like that, but I guess it kind of puts them on a level playing field with everybody else to some degree.
Yeah, and hey, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but I'm a connect the dots guy, and it'll be interesting. I'm over here practically Googling who are the 2026 free agents because the Yankees got something up their sleeve. They didn't just do this out of nowhere just because they got embarrassed in the World Series. It's not as if the facial hair policy is all of a sudden going to make you try and compete against the Dodgers all of a sudden, unless, maybe there's somebody that they got their eyes on for next year.
Who just happens to have a beard.
Yeah.
I smell what you're cooking there, Rock. Tony Clark the head of the Major League Baseball Players Association, and Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, probably won't be exchanging Christmas cards. Kind of went at Manfred for his negativity toward baseball in terms of the potential for a lockout here soon. When the commissioner suggests openly that the expectation is a work stoppage and that a lockout is the new norm or should be considered as much, that's going to lend itself to some conversation, even though we're a year and a half, 2 years away from the expiration of the agreement. We'll continue to talk about it openly too. It'll be an environment where the game seems to be moving forward positively while the other side keeps interjecting negativity into the conversation, but we'll navigate it accordingly. Manfred recently said that a lockout can be a positive, which I can see where Tony Clark and other folks might take exception to that. I mean, when folks don't get to that kind of thing, what's positive about that? So, yeah. A lot of people have problems with Manfred for a lot of different reasons, and this just seems like it would add to it probably. So
yeah, I mean, I get what Manfred's saying, but you kind of never want to say that publicly. You never kind of want to hear that as a fan or anybody else. Anybody outside of big league offices is not really going to want to read something like that. I kind of get where he's going. You have a chance to kind of use this as a little bit of a leverage tool. But it's just
and it's a little bit of a reset maybe, but no, it's not great. And it's kind of it feels like it's going to sign the quiet part out loud to some degree. Yeah, it doesn't feel good to it sounds like he's kind of embracing the possibility of a lockout almost, and like I said, that just can't be good. So
and it feels that league especially feels like the lockout is the last word that ever needs to be uttered in that league, because they're fighting tooth and nail on a daily basis to try and maintain what foothold they do have. And it just feels like they cannot afford to kind of do anything in the public perception, whether it's true or not, perceived or otherwise. They kind of need to maintain good graces and good footing.
Yeah, absolutely. As we mentioned last week, the high school state wrestling tournament took place over the weekend out at the Ag Expo here in Franklin, and had a number of winning performances from local wrestlers. So be sure and check out Main Street Preps for a lot of coverage from this weekend's tournament, but one in particular, Nathaniel Graham from Station Camp won 113-pound Class A state championship. And this is a kid who apparently was paralyzed briefly over the summer as a result of a scoliosis diagnosis that he's long had. Apparently did something and it flared up, and he was literally paralyzed. Came back and won a state championship, defeated Luke Myhan from Saudi Daisy 11-8 in overtime. That match was voted the best match, I think, in the Class A state tournament. Congratulations to that young man and a number of other local winners. Summit Braden Leach, who is a UT Chattanooga signee, was named outstanding wrestler in Class AA after winning his second consecutive state championship. He won at 157, 3 pins and a tech fall for his championship run there. So again, a lot of coverage of the state tournament at Main Street, mainstreetpreps.com, a lot at Main Street Murray as well. So be sure and check all of that out. And congratulations to all of those young men and ladies for girls champions as well. That's going to do it for the Monday Mirror edition of Main Street Sports Today, presented by the Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance of Columbia. Be sure and join us tomorrow at 2 o'clock. We'll see y'all then.